This episode of Euphoria wasn't really about success. It was about what people are willing to sell to get close to it. Their image, their body, their morals, their peace, their relationships, even their safety. And by the end of episode 2, it became very clear that almost every major character is chasing a better life, but none of them are walking toward it clean. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Euphoria Season 3 returned this week with Episode 2, and what I find so interesting about this season so far is that it's not just exploring ambition, it's exploring the cost of ambition.
Everyone wants more. More money, more status, more freedom, more control. But the deeper they go, the uglier things get. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Let's break down the episode.
The biggest idea running through this episode is simple. Nothing comes free. Everyone in this story wants to reinvent themselves, but nobody is doing it in a clean or healthy way. Instead, they're entering deals. Quiet ones, emotional ones, sexual ones, criminal ones, social ones. Every character is trying to trade one part of themselves for access to a better version of life. That is why this episode feels so dark under the surface. From the outside, it looks like people are moving up. Rue gets more power. Cassie gets more confidence. Maddie sees an opening. Jules looks financially secure. Nate still carries himself like someone in control. But if you look closer, all of them are standing on unstable ground. This episode is not saying, look how exciting it is to level up. It is saying, look how fast the price starts climbing. And that's why I think this season's theme is much more dangerous than just the American dream. It's really about the systems underneath that dream. The way people are used, marketed, sold, manipulated, and emotionally hollowed out while trying to reach it. Rue thinks she's moving up, but
And that is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because for the first time in a long time, Rue is getting something that feels close to confidence. She's being rewarded. She's being trusted. She's being brought into a world that feels bigger and more powerful than the one she was trapped in before. But the problem is that all of this is happening inside a system that is rotten to the core. The show makes that very clear through Angel. Rue gets emotionally and physically close to someone who is already deeply vulnerable, someone tied directly to the death that the club is trying to bury. And instead of pulling away from that world, Rue gets deeper into it. She lies, she covers things up, she plays along. She starts acting like this life is manageable as long as she knows how to move through it. That is classic Rue. She always thinks she can stand close to destruction without eventually getting swallowed by it. And the rehab storyline? I do not trust it at all. The show goes out of its way to make that place feel wrong. The atmosphere is off. The people are off. The whole energy of it feels less like recovery and more like disappearance. So my read on that ending is this. Angel is not being sent somewhere to heal. She is being removed because she knows to.
Cassie enters this episode believing she's finally taking control. She wants money of her own. She wants attention of her own. She wants something that belongs to her, not Nate, not the wedding, not the fantasy of becoming somebody's wife. And on paper, that sounds empowering. But the problem is, Cassie still doesn't really know herself. She knows what gets attention. She knows how to become desirable. She knows how to make herself into something people want. But that is not the same thing as having an identity. And that is where Maddie becomes dangerous.
And Nate is sitting right in the middle of that. The bedroom scene made that crystal clear. The fact that both Nate and Cassie refer to Maddie in possessive terms is not subtle. She is no longer just somebody from the past. She is becoming a pressure point inside the relationship. And I really do think this story is headed toward Cassie realizing that the life she has with Nate is smaller than the one she could build without him. The second she starts feeling financially powerful, emotionally visible, and socially wanted outside of him, the marriage stops looking like security and starts looking like limitation. That's when things get ugly. Nate is still performing power he doesn't actually have. Nate's storyline in this episode is all about image. He wants to look stable, in control, successful, like the guy who is building something big. But the reality underneath that surface is chaos, debt, pressure, deadlines, public embarrassment, a wedding he can barely hold together, and the kind of financial instability that makes every small moment feel loaded. What I like about this storyline is that it shows Nate doing what he always does best, performing strength while quietly rotting underneath it. The party scenes are great for that because Nate doesn't just want success. He wants control over how success looks. That is why I think his downfall this season is going to be especially brutal. It won't just be financial. It will be symbolic. He will lose the image he spent years building. And if the people funding him are genuinely dangerous, then the show is setting him up for something much worse than embarrassment. He's moving like somebody who still thinks this is a business problem. But the tone of the episode suggests it's becoming a survival problem. Would I be surprised if Nate ends this season with no project, no marriage, no money, and no social dominance left? Not at all. In fact, I think that might be exactly where this is heading. Jules is the quietest version of the same theme. Jules doesn't dominate the episode, but what we see from her is... But this is Euphoria. Clean rarely stays clean. So I don't believe for a second that her setup is going to remain emotionally simple. If this season is about what people trade away to secure a better life, then Jules is absolutely part of that conversation too. Hers just looks softer right now, and that makes it more dangerous, not less. So was this episode good? Yes, and more importantly, I think it was smart. This episode doesn't explode in your face the way some past Euphoria episodes do. It's not built around one massive shock moment. It's more interested in laying out emotional economics. Who wants what they're willing to trade for it, and how fast those trades start corrupting them. For me, Rue and Cassie carried the episode. They feel the most alive dramatically, and both stories are moving towards something ugly in a very compelling way. Maddie and Jules also benefited from getting more room this week. They didn't feel sidelined. They felt integrated into the season's larger thematic machine. Nate's story is still a little less emotionally detailed right now, but I think that is intentional. The show is keeping him in performance mode because the bigger collapse hasn't fully happened yet. Overall,
So for me, the real ending of Euphoria Season 3, Episode 2 is this. Everybody thinks they're building a better life, but almost no one realizes they're being reshaped by the system helping them get there. Ruth thinks she's climbing. Cassie thinks she's becoming independent. Nate thinks he can still control the story. And Maddie thinks she's finally found a lane to real success. But all of it feels unstable. What did you think of the episode? Do you think Angel is actually gone for good? And do you think Maddie is helping Cassie or quietly using her? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe to Breakdown Epic, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.